Good morning, everyone. This is Group 1, and I'm reporting Chapter 1 Ethics in Business. So, I'd like to start it with a quote of Warren Buffett, Ethics Business. He said, "It takes 20 years to build a reputation and 5 minutes to ruin it. If you think about that, you'll do things differently." With this, Warren's Buffet quote emphasizes that fragility of the reputation and the importance of thoughtful decision making. It suggests that while we build trust and a good reputation, it takes time and effort. A single misstep can quickly undo it. Reflecting on this helps guide actions with long-term integrity in mind, making us more cautious and deliberate. Next is the business ethics. At its most basic level, ethics is concerned with how we should act and how we should live our lives. Business ethics examines responsibilities we owe to ourselves and to each other. How should I act with business? How should business should act? What responsibilities do I have as a business person? What responsibilities does a business have to employees, to customers, and to society? So, as its foundation, ethics is about understanding the difference between right and wrong and applying that understanding to our actions and decisions. It deals with how we should behave, make choices, and lead lives that are moral, just, and aligned with principles of fairness and integrity. Business ethics applies these ideas to the world of commerce and professional life. It focuses on the moral obligation that businesses and individuals within those businesses have to one another, to society, and to themselves. This includes treating others fairly, being honest, fulfilling promises, and ensuring that business decisions positively impact stakeholders like employees, customers, investors, and the wider community. For business students, ethics is an important field of study. Business ethics is a process of decision making. Business must take ethics into account and integrate ethics into its organizational structure. Scandals are brought about by ethical failures and unethical decisions. This text provides a decision making model that can help analyze and avoid future ethical. So, for business students, studying ethics is crucial because it helps them understand how to make responsible decisions in their future careers. Business ethics involves not just understanding what is right and wrong, but applying that making process in a professional world environment. Business need to integrate ethical thinking into a operation, meaning that ethics should be part of the company's culture, leadership, and decision-making framework. When organizations ignore ethics, they risk making decisions that lead to unethical behavior, which can result in scandals, loss of trust, and damage to their reputation.
But who makes the ethical decisions? There are three levels that do. First is the individual level, second is the organizational level, and then we have the social and governmental level. But we should start with the social and governmental level because whatever is considered ethical in these contexts trickles down and affect businesses, industries, and individuals since it's what's considered correct in a specific society and has the power to become law. As organizations, ethical decisions are made with the help of culture and leadership. So, as for example, FEU compared to other colleges has a more lax dress code since it's part of the organizational culture that they're inclusive of religious beliefs, sexual orientation, and etc. And then lastly, as individuals, we make ethical decisions because we interact with these businesses as customers and employees. So we have the power to strike, we have the power to boycott these businesses, and then as citizens of the countries in which where they operate. As for the goals of business ethics, we have develop, understand, decide, create, and think. So what do we develop? We develop the knowledge and skills that we need to identify ethical issues. And after we identify an ethical issue, we have to understand how and why people behaved ethically or unethically. And then we also have to understand the effects of a possible decision that we make. And then once we understand, what would happen, we then decide. We make the decision on how to act, what to do, and what to be as an individual. And in making that in making that decision, we actually create the ethical organization in and of itself. And then after that, we have to think back. We have to think through the social, economic, and political policies that we should support. But we also have to think, what have we learned after dealing with ethical issues inside the organization? And how do we extend that to outside of the organization?
This slide focuses on how ethical decision making leads to more responsible behavior in business. The key point here is that ethical deliberation can shape better behavior by encouraging thoughtful decision making. Ethical decision making in business is about finding a balance between subjective and absolute rules, while using rational thought to achieve ethical and accountable outcomes. Two perspectives on ethics are presented. First, perspective is views, ethics are being subjective, nothing more than personal opinion and feelings. This implies that ethical standards can vary widely depending on individuals' beliefs or emotional reaction. Second, perspective believes that can provide clear, absolute, and truths. This suggests that ethics can offer concrete guidelines for behavior that apply universally, regardless of personal feelings. The author's approach suggests a balanced view between these two perspectives. They argue that rational decision making can guide people towards ethical behavior that is both reasonable and accountable. The assumption here is that deliberative thought rather than impulsive or purely subjective reaction will lead to more ethical outcomes. Teaching ethics must challenge students to think for themselves. This means encouraging critical thinking and the ability to reason through ethical dilemmas rather than simply accepting ethical norms. There are two different types of reasoning that are important in understanding business ethics: practical reasoning and theoretical reasoning. Practical reasoning, this type of reasoning is about what we ought to do, how we should act in given situations. Ethics is a key part of practical reasoning as it helps guide decisions about right and wrong. Basically, practical reasoning deals with how we act. In contrast, theoretical reasoning is aimed at determining what we should believe. It is concerned with understanding and establishing truth. So, theoretical reasoning deals with how we think and believe. Both reasoning are essential to making an ethical decision in business, where action and beliefs must be aligned with reason and truth.
Today, I will be discussing with you business ethics as personal integrity and social responsibility. Distinguishing ethics involves two factors or approaches, which are social, scientific approach, and normative approach. Social scientific approach emphasizes a method to dictate, describe, and predict human behavior. It monitors the situation on why an individual acted the way they did and for whatever reason. And for normative approach, it focuses more on actions, whether it is morally correct or incorrect, and how one individual's decision varies from the certain situation. Given the idea, questions that are usually asked upon themselves are: what should I do? What rights and responsibilities are involved? And what good will come from this situation? Another way to practice business ethics as personal integrity and social responsibility is with norms. Ethics is a normative discipline as it deals with norms. Norms are the ethical standards of promoting and having a proper and appropriate behavior. This serves as a guideline on maintaining values such as transparency, respect, honesty, and integrity.
Today, I will discuss to you the business ethics as personal integrity and social responsibility. So, the concept of business ethics from the perspective of personal integrity and social responsibility, it explores the fundamental question of ethics
how should we live. So, in the context of business ethics, managerial decisions involve balancing three key aspects. First is the personal integrity, second is the social responsibilities, and third is the legal and political environment. So, um, individual perspective, personal integrity, from an individual standpoint, ethics is rooted in personal values, structures, and moral system. In business, this manifests as personal integrity. It involves defining one's moral framework and applying these morals decision-making processes. And for the next is collective perspective, the social responsibility. When considering ethics collectively, the focus shifts to how we coexist in communities in the business world. This is often referred to as social ethics or corporate social responsibility. It involves evaluating companies from a social perspective and judging businesses based on their impact on society. And the third is legal and political environment. From an individual standpoint, navigating the legal and political environment in business ethics involves understanding and interacting with external regulatory frameworks and political dynamics. In business, this manifests as legal compliance and political awareness. It involves in understanding relevant laws and regulation and applying legal and political knowledge to decision making. And next is let's talk about the defining we individual and we in collective. So first is individual ethics. Ethics is based on our personal value structures and moral systems, sometimes referred to as personal integrity. And next is morality is distinguished from questions of social justice, which address how communities and social organizations should be structured. And last is if morals refer to the underlying values on which decisions are based. Ethics refers to the application of those morals to the decisions themselves. And for collective ethics, we can also refer to how we live together in a community, which is sometimes referred to as social ethics. From this perspective, we judge companies and organizations based on their corporate social responsibility. So, in summary, the question of how should we live can be examined from both an individual and a collective perspective. Individual ethics focuses on our personal values and how we apply them, while collective ethics considers how we should structure our communities and organizations to live together responsibly. And for ethics as a normative discipline, unlike descriptive social sciences, ethics is normative, focusing on how people should act rather than merely describing behavior. It provides guidance for decision making and actions in various contexts, including business. And for business ethics involves two key aspects, the social, scientific, and the normative. Yeah. For social scientific examines factor influencing decisions, and for normative as what the ethical course of action is based on principles like fairness, justice, and responsibility.
Making the case for business ethics. The focus of this slide is on the separation thesis, which suggests that ordinary ethical standards should not be applied to business decisions. Instead, business should be evaluated by its own set of standards. It suggests that businesses should still follow some ethics and values, but this may differ from traditional ethical standards. Psychological egoism. One philosophical concept that aligns with this thinking, which claims that all human actions are motivated by self-interest. In the context of business, this would mean that business decisions are inherently self-centered. However, this approach has its challenges. For instance, decision makers should take into account the effects their choices have on a wide range of stakeholders.
I'll be discussing ethics and the law. Deciding what one should do in business does require consideration of what the law requires, expectation, and permits. Legal norms and ethical norms are not identical. Legal standards are based on written law, while ethical standards are based on human rights and wrong. In compliance with the law, enough to behave ethical. Is the law itself ethical? The law may prevent harm, but does it promote goods? Only complying with the law may lead to more regulation. Law may not be in place for new situation. Law may be ambitious. Ethical consideration demonstrate that business cannot avoid making ethical judgment, even if it is fully committed to obeying the law. Many corporations establish ethics program and hire ethics officers who are responsible for managing or corporate ethics program. Law offers general rules clarified by legal precedent. There is no ambitious answer for those wishing only to obey laws, but there is a risk assessment. Risk assessment is a process to identify potential events that may affect the entity and the managed risk to be within its risk appetite. To provide reasonable assurance regarding the achievement of entity objectives, when there is involved potential harm and benefits to the variety of stakeholders, it is a judgment that involves ethics as well. Business must take ethics into account and integrate ethics into its organizational structure. And that's all for the ethics and laws. Thank you.
So, for the distinction between values and ethics, we may think that uh, the both of them is very common or has a lot of similarities, but there is a significant distinction between the two. So, values are basically what drives us to make choices, like what we think is important or worth doing. So, everyone's got their own personal values, and even companies have them. It is part of their culture. But here's the catch: values can lead to either good or bad outcomes, depending on what they are aiming for. Ethical values are all about helping people live better lives. Things like being honest, fair, and treating each other right. So, on the flip side, some values may push for personal gains or shortcuts, which can lead to shady results. So, yeah, basically, values may shape how we act, but ethical values make sure we are looking out for the greater good. So, that is the key difference or the distinction between values and ethics. All right, so for the next one, we're going to talk about ethics and practical reasoning. So, ethics is all about just figuring out what we should do in different situations. So, it's it's basically different from theoretical reasoning, which is more about what we should believe and what we should be chasing after the truth. So, for this, there's no really one size fits all way to handle ethical stuff, but I believe there are guidelines to help us make better choices. So, ethical theories break down and defend the standards and principles we use to make these decisions. So, at the end of the day, ethics is what keeps us on track with our actions and not just on our beliefs.